ask each of the candidates to talk for 2 minutes and to give us just kind of an introductory statement from them, and this much they know. I also decided to go backwards alphabetically, just to do something a little bit different. We have a timekeeper, and that's Tom Brush here. And then we're going to kind of open it up to questions. Now, this is a very talkative group. And so in order for them to not talk too much, I'm going to ask them to try to keep their questions really succinct. And then you all will have a chance to answer. And we'll keep you to like 3 minutes per answer so that everybody gets a chance to answer in order. Does that make sense? Okay. And I thought one of the things that we did in the Washington Faces Race community conversations is we talked about there are some people in this room who are less likely to talk, who are likely to kind of sit back and not talk. And if you're one of those people and you have something you want to say, please raise your hand and say it so that you will talk. For those of you who like to talk a lot, how about if you obey the rule of 3? And that's if you ask one question, don't ask another unless 3 other people have asked questions. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so let's get started. Tracy, you're on.
I just realized that's right. V comes in handy once in a while. So I'm Tracy Bergh. I'm running for Washtenaw County Probate Court Judge. I'm sure a lot of you are informed about my background, but I am currently a lawyer at Legal Services of South Central Michigan. Legal Services is a nonprofit that provides free legal representation to low-income residents in Washtenaw County. I specialize in the areas of family law, I do probate work, and I also specialize in litigation. I'm essentially the person in the office who sits first chair in most complicated trials, supervises people in our office on trials, works with the students. In addition to being an attorney, I do have a master's in social work, which I got in 1994 from New York University. After receiving my master's, I practiced for over 10 years, treating people with mental health issues and substance abuse problems. I ran an adolescent day treatment facility, drug treatment facility in Jamaica, Queens, and then moved on to an adult day treatment facility with a primary psychiatric secondary substance abuse diagnosis. So why is this relevant to the probate court position? And I'm sure, again, a lot of you are very well informed, but as you know, the probate docket, as the judges announced the docket on January 1st of this year, so that they could attract candidates who had the type of experience they were looking for, and specifically expertise in the areas of probate and family law. And if we look at the probate docket, we know that the majority of that docket covers areas related to mental health. Alternative treatment orders, involuntary hospitalizations, adult guardianships, conservatorships, of course we have family law. So many of the issues that come before the court are, frankly, a lot of the case law in probate is very straightforward.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's really the issues that can make it complicated.
Great, okay. And if my alphabet is working right backwards, Julia?
Hi, my name is Julia Owdziej. I bet name you can't spell or pronounce. It's Owdziej. And if you say outside, you're close enough that I will answer. I went to recently to a function for a judge who was retiring, and someone described the qualities of a judge as knowledge, experience, and wisdom. And I thought that hit the nail right on the head. If you look at our experiences, I've been an attorney for 25 years. My experience started with, I was the first Michigan Assistant Attorney General. I worked in the Wayne County Probate Court. I then spent 8 years in the prosecutor's office in Washtenaw County. I then was a juvenile court referee for 14 years, a deputy probate registrar here in Washtenaw County for 3 years, and now I'm currently the probate judge. When I was a prosecutor here, I tried 50 felony circuit trial jury trials. I did murder trials, armed robberies, sexual assaults, domestic violence cases, and as I said, I did over 50 in the circuit court of those kind of jury trials. As a juvenile court referee, if you're not familiar with referee, it's similar to a judge. It takes part of the judge's docket, but it's done by a referee. It's wear a black robe, they say all rise when you walk in the courtroom, but you're making a decision regarding juveniles. And my primary assignment was with the juvenile delinquents. So I did everything from beginning to end, the first placement orders. If they went to trial, I was the person that decided whether the prosecutor could prove that they had committed a crime or not. I did placement orders for them, and also in the abuse and neglect area, I did the initial placement order. So if DHS calls, sometimes they would call me 2 o'clock in the morning, here's a situation we have regarding this child, can I immediately remove this child from the home or not immediately remove the child? Same with youngsters who were arrested. The police would sometimes call in the middle of the night, here's a situation we have, should this youngster go to detention or should they remain in the home before the next court hearing? Thank you.
Well, thank you to the DRC and to all of you for being here today. These are important elections. My name is Veronique Liem, and I am running for the Circuit Court. This is a judicial seat that has been designated to primarily hear family law cases. There are important cases that I'm sure you all know: custody, divorce, paternity, and they touch all of us in some way or another. People we know, ourselves, they're very important. I am running based on my own merits. I am running based on my own personal accomplishments. I am running based on what I can do for the court as well as for our community. I want to build a family court that is creative and that look at possible ways of helping families and children and at protecting children from the trauma of their parents' disputes so that they are not scarred for life. Mediation certainly is one of those methods, and I have been a mediator for a very long time. I'm a court-approved mediator of civil and family law cases. I am also a certified collaborative divorce attorney. That is another method that can be sometimes better suited for certain people. I am an arbitrator. I am extremely committed to using cooperative methods of resolving most cases, but especially family law cases. And throughout my career, I have had a very strong commitment professionally on that. For example, I am currently on the executive board of the Collaborative Practice Institute of Michigan. In terms of my experience, I have been an attorney for 25 years. I also, I do at times when I can't avoid it, litigate cases. I have litigated cases in the circuit court. I have gone to federal court. I have gone to the Michigan Court of Appeals as well as to the Michigan Supreme Court. In terms of family law, I am a fellow of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. It is a professional organization, a national organization with very stringent admission standards based on demonstrated experience in family law and demonstrated knowledge of the law.
Hi, I'm assuming he said play. My name is Pat Conlin, and I am also running for the Circuit Court in Washington County. Again, I'm going to assume that most of you, based on your earlier answers, have done some of the research and maybe gone online or talked to your friends or maybe talked to Sally, I'm not sure. But just briefly, I have grown up in this county. I have been a lawyer for about 16 and a half years. And I have, prior to that, I was a high school teacher for about 7 years after college. So have a little bit of diversity in my experience and also have a little bit of diversity in my legal practice. I think a fundamental difference between how Veronique and I view this position is that I believe that it is, while it is designated to primarily serve the family court next year, I think, one, it's unlikely that it will stay that way for a long duration. And in fact, I think it really needs a judge who's ready to handle all sorts of cases right now. A recent example would be when Judge Wheeler retired, Judge Connors had been hearing the probate court docket. Julia Owdziej was appointed to temporarily fill that spot, and the next day, I think her first day with the new black robe on, Judge Connors handed her the probate docket to handle as well. So my point being, I think that the judge needs to be ready to hear all sorts of cases, and that's really been the breadth of my experience in 16 years. So I've been in a general practice. I do a lot of litigation. I do a lot of different types of litigation, civil litigation, some criminal representation. I've worked in the juvenile courts. So I have a pretty broad-ranging experience. I actually do a lot of transactional work, so that involves a lot of counseling with clients as well. I'm very pleased to have an opportunity to serve the people of this county, and I hope that I'm able to do so with honor and integrity. I believe that I am the right candidate for the job. Personally, I'm a bridge builder. I'm an idea person. One of the township supervisors suggested to me that the people that live on the east side of the county struggle to find parking downtown. So I just kind of went around and did some research and realized that we could use the courthouse across the parking lot for some of those things too. So I'm excited about this opportunity.
Okay. So let's open it up to questions.
I would address a question to Veronique. Do you have a business background, and do you have the experience in dealing with business litigation and employment litigation, other things other than family law?
I do. I started my career at the law firm of Honeyman in Detroit. It's a big law firm. In the first 2 years of my career, I worked in commercial and business litigation, as well as other civil cases, construction litigation, employment, and I have continued doing so throughout my practice. I do strongly specialize in family law, but I also do handle a lot of other circuit court cases, and I have dealt with appeals of some of those cases as well, appeals to the Michigan Court of Appeals, or attempt at getting the case into federal court. In terms of the scope of my non-family law practice, I would say it includes employment, some real estate, certainly includes commercial and business litigation. And I have even done some personal injury case, very little. I did represent someone who had the case dismissed at the lower court level. I did the appeal of that case and managed to have the case overturned so that the plaintiff could continue pursuing claims for some very serious injuries from a car accident. So I also learned what I need to learn. This was not my area of practice, and by doing the appeals, I had to learn the law. I learned the law and I succeeded in reversing the case. I do that repeatedly in my career, and I would do that as a judge. If the docket was to change, I would learn what needs to be learned, but I already know a lot. And I would also, I would add that I don't think it is so likely that the docket will change. Judge Schwartz has made clear to a lot of people, including James Schlein at the Arbor Observer, that the plan is to keep this as a family court, and it is an opportunity for us to have a family court.
Thank you.
Joanna?
In spite of my disclaimer that I vote in Iowa and am informed about Iowa, I am the Sally Brush of all my uninformed friends in Michigan who the day of election called me about all the judges. So I thought that was hilariously funny. So because I need to know a lot about Michigan judges, I have a question I need to ask all of you. How do you feel about restorative justice?
I just spoke, so I
Yeah,
give the
okay.
chance to someone else.
I'm glad to. We're trying to make a lot of use of it in the court now. I'm in the probate court now, and anytime that you can get parties to buy in on their own agreement, if they're part of the process of making the decision, the chances of them following it, the chances of them getting along and agreeing to it, if they've had a part in the process of it, certainly increases those chances. So we've been making use of it and continue to do that. And I've met with the DRC already to try and make use of those alternative things, make sure we're taking advantage of all the services that they have to offer.
Absolutely. Do you want us to all answer the same question?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
So, I'm also in favor of restorative justice. I think this is an area where having this combined background as both an attorney and as a clinical social worker really suits me. In terms of being able to bridge the conflict between parties to try to facilitate that process. One of the things that's really interesting to look at right now are the ACEs studies, which are the Adverse Childhood Experience studies. These are long-term 30-year studies through the National Institutes of Health that are now being looked at in the courts. Because what we're seeing is that many of the people who come before the court have adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, and have been victims of trauma, and that the court system itself re-traumatizes them. And it's a significant issue because it interferes with the rehabilitation and ability of people to move on and increases recidivism as well as visits back to the court. So restorative justice is one area that people really, that they're looking at as something that is specifically geared toward dealing with people who have had these adverse childhood experiences. It's a judge down in Florida has, their whole court has done ACEs training now, and she's been a judge for 37 years, and she says just being informed about these adverse childhood experiences has absolutely changed the way she's run her courtroom and addressed litigants. And not to get too technical, but one of the areas, it's almost like it's in the way the judge even interacts with people, not solely, but is in a restorative method and uses methods of almost cognitive behavioral therapy to address litigants and perpetrators so that you can facilitate some restructuring and people taking responsibility without just having that black and white, you're a terrible person approach that helps people long term to heal and potentially rehabilitate. So that's something I'm very interested in.
Do you want to go back?
Sure. I think it's probably trite but fair to say that we don't want to send people to jail because we're angry with them. And I think that Michigan courts have done some work to temper that because there are a fair number, especially in our county, we're lucky, there are a fair number of diversion programs run through the district courts. We have resources such as the Dispute Resolution Center, other agencies that can step in and assist people that are accused of crime specifically. And so we have a great network of opportunity here. It's not enough, and there's always a tension with funding. I think the difficulty is that a lot of the programs that used to be very effective have gone away just because of lack of state or federal or local funding. So I'm very in favor of restorative justice programming. The circuit court is a little bit different, or at least it's a little bit untried, because the criminal aspect of circuit court is the felony criminal docket, which is where there's more likelihood of the not angry with the defendant but afraid of the defendant. And so you really need to be clear about keeping society safe relative to the level of the crime. However, I think there's some interesting potential overlap with the family court issue. A lot of people get into trouble about whether the accusation is they're using alcohol or drugs, and that's to the detriment of the family, of the children, of the visitation, of the transport. And I think there's probably some ability to utilize the techniques of the drug court or the sobriety court in ways that can help families wend their way through that process. So I think that would take a lot of the accusation and bring into the family court a lot of required treatment and oversight and testing that can bring a lot of comforting the fears of the other parent and allowing those parents to continue to have meaningful relationships with their kids. I don't know about the civil docket so much. The real estate aspect, I'm not sure, but I'll think about that. Thank you.
I too believe we really need to do a lot more toward rehabilitative justice. I recognize our courts have done, here in Washtenaw County have done quite a bit. There's all the pilot court at the district court level. There's the peacemaking court that Judge Connors has initiated, which has some good potential, and I give him a lot of credit for doing this and introducing this to our county. The concern I have with the kind of justice that's not rehabilitative is how it stigmatizes people, especially for nonviolent crimes. People come out of jail with very much stigma, having difficulties finding new employment. Their own family lose sometimes a person who brings income to the family. They fall into poverty. There are a lot of collateral consequences from being too quick at putting people to jail. So I think it is something that we all really have a duty to pay close attention to. Certainly a judge needs to be very proactive, whether or not there is a criminal docket for that judge, because those are very important societal issues. The cost issue is also something that people should be much more aware of. It is probably a lot less expensive to treat people, to give them opportunities to rehabilitate themselves than to put them in jail. And so I think there's a lot that we can do as a society. There's a lot that judges can do and should do. So that is pretty much where I am on
Okay, I'm going to piggyback on Joanna's question. I know that Judge Connors now has the juvenile court, so he will no longer be referring probate or family cases to the peacemaking court. Do any or all of you see a connection for the court that you are running for in the peacemaking court, and how do you think that might work?
Okay, let me start. I mean, I've already spoken with Judge Connors about this. We both think that it's a very good fit, the peacemaking court for probate and family law matters. So, you know, brief answer is yes. I'm sure my colleagues feel similar. So.
Yeah, I do too, and I know there has been some peacemaking courts in the family law arena. I have heard of some cases which were intractable, in heavy conflict, and then they tried the peacemaking court and actually settled all these issues that for years they had been unable to settle. So I think there is definitely a lot of potential there in terms of the peacemaking court.
I agree. I think just piggybacking on all those answers, that's a great tool for us to explore. Peacemaking isn't appropriate for every type of case, nor is it appropriate maybe for every type of the different dockets that we have, but it certainly is well worth a try in most of them. And I think that there's real potential there for great work to be done. So
The peacemaking court accepts cases from all areas. It's not just cases that Judge Connors handles. He'll accept cases from the domestic docket, from the probate docket. So it's not limited to that. And we were at juvenile court when I was there. We tried a process too of bringing in victims to have mediation with the youngsters that were there. And so some that came in worked. We had a real difficult time getting folks interested to come in. So we have to find some way to engage them, to get them to come in. Because we had a probation officer who tried really hard to get members of the community involved in that and didn't get a ton of interest. So we'd like to try that again, something to get them more involved. I think as this area of peacemaking court, as the dispute resolution, alternative to resolutions get more in favor, hopefully we'll get more people in. That's one of the reasons we started the juvenile drug court as well. We did not have a method to treat those youngsters that were dealing with those drug and alcohol issues. And so we created our own program and provide those intensive services, and it's a treatment of the whole family. So I ran that program for 7 years, and we treated the whole family and not just the youngster, because you had to put that youngster back into that home. So if you only treat them and not the family, you didn't really get very far ahead.
Good. And I also like the fact that you all know you don't have to use all of the 3 minutes for every answer.
yes.
Okay. Who else has a question? John?
Yeah. Julie, I believe you opened, and I'm paraphrasing, that I believe you said that a judge has to have wisdom, knowledge of the law, and life experience, somewhat along those lines. Here's my question. What level of energy and interest do you, well, I guess this is a general question for everyone. What level of energy and interest do you have in the cases, you know, considering that you have a lot of things to handle?
Well, as my husband, I'm not home much of the 12-hour days I'm putting in the weekends I'm working. You know, when I took over the domestic docket particularly, that had been without a regular judge for almost 2 years. So you could have filed a case there, and I could be the 5th judge you're seeing. That's not a way to do business. So I felt a tremendous obligation when I got this appointment to get that docket under control, to make sure that people were having a final decision maker. And I was given advice when I came in, Julie, you don't have to make a tough decision. No one can appeal an adjournment. And so until the election was over, don't make a tough decision. And I don't think I got this appointment to adjourn things. And so I've taken that docket already, and even in the several months that I've had it, it has gotten better. We've been able to get the cases under control, less cases coming in. But I went in and I made decisions. And it took a tremendous amount of time because I wasn't familiar with taking up a whole new docket. It was 12-hour days, at least 3 days a week, and weekends. So I don't have much time for the family or much else, but I felt an obligation to do that. Those cases.
I'm doing I can address.
Sure.
Sure, we can do it whatever way. Yeah, well, I mean, those who know me know I have a lot of energy. You know, I started out my practice at a large law firm as a commercial litigator. I worked for Bodman before I went after law school. And when I went to legal services, one of the things that I said is that every client who comes into legal services is going to get the same level of representation that I gave high-paying clients at Bodman. It was very, very important to me because, you get that, there's a stereotype about legal aid lawyers. Oh, it's an 8-to-4 job. Well, anybody who's worked with me knows that's not me. Currently, as a matter of fact, I've been juggling and been getting into the office around 6:30 in the morning because I have a brief going up to the Supreme Court as of Wednesday is the due date on a family law case, and I'm juggling my entire docket, which at legal services is I carry a large number of cases and provide high quality legal services. Bob Gillette, my boss, always says, well, a year at legal services is like 5 years in the field. He always jokes about it because we do carry so many cases, and we try cases. I've tried dozens and dozens of cases, and they expect a high quality representation. I am planning on bringing that same energy to the bench. I am a problem solver. I have social work students, for example, under my supervision at legal services because I realized my clients needed case management services, and I didn't have enough time to do it, be the lawyer and the social worker, even though I hold both degrees. Plan to do the same thing in the probate court. So, when we see limitations, I look at ways to expand services. So we're making sure that everybody's getting what they need. And the nice thing about students, it was at no cost to our nonprofit agency. So.
I'm a hard worker. I think I'm a hard worker, and I have a lot of energy. I don't do actually very well when I don't have much to do, and that's fairly rarely the case. A couple examples: campaigning for this past year and working full time. That takes a lot of energy and hard work. I'm becoming a fellow of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. There's only 5 of us in Washtenaw County. Diana is one of them. She's right here. She can attest that it's a fairly demanding process, and you have to take 2 exams at a time in your career where you don't really expect to take exams anymore. You have to. I had to study. I don't know if Diana did, but I had to review laws related to bankruptcy, taxation, ERISA, which is pension-related law, as well as family law, statewide and at the federal level. All of that took a lot of dedication and energy and hard work. I also am very committed professionally to excel. That's one example. Another one is I was one of the early attorneys to become a mediator. I am also a court-approved mediator, not only of family law, but of also civil cases. And I am a certified collaborative divorce attorney. So I really strive to excel and to be engaged in my profession actively. I will add one more thing. I think campaigning is very demanding, but it's excellent training ground for a judge. We learn a lot about our community. We are engaged in the community. We learn about issues that are very significant to the community, like you're bringing today. And I strongly recommend this experience for anybody who's running for judge. And has energy.
I think it does wean you out. I can comfortably say, knowing the 3 other people, candidates sitting up here, that I think we're all hard workers. I mean, I think we're all successful, and like my colleagues, I've maintained a busy law office in Chelsea. 2 years ago, I opened another law office in Ann Arbor as a second job, part-time. I've maintained that. Like my colleagues, I have a wide variety of cases, mediation, litigation, transactional work. Like a lot of you, I've been able to maintain that level of professionalism while I have 3 kids that are 15, 13, and 9. I will say the overlay of the campaign on top of everything else has probably allowed my children to raise themselves for a period of time. My wife opened a business in March, so if the stars aligning, this wouldn't necessarily have been the exact right time for me to do this, but we're all in. So, but through it all, and I would agree that this is an amazing opportunity to meet people around the county, but have been able to maintain really a very busy professional life, personal life, and my campaign at the same time.
Bookkeeper may have a question.
You're all white, yet your clientele, or your people who come before you, probably don't reflect your culture. Do you find that, you think about that, does it bother you? And how do you approach hearing cases where people are coming from a culture that is foreign to you?
Do you want to start?
Sure. I am white. And that's a great question. So the first part of my career out of college was teaching high school in the South Bronx. There was a movie in the 70s called Fort Apache, the Bronx. I taught there for a year, and then I continued to teach in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, where really, literally, my student body that I was working with was like a little United Nations. None of them had any money, but they were from all parts of the globe. And I only give that example because that part of my life, when I was unmarried and excited about my career as a teacher, I wasn't trained as a social worker, but that's kind of how I felt. And so I was able to coach and teach and do everything, and I still maintain relationships with those kids, but I saw how the urban overlay of poverty and dysfunctional family could directly impact young people. And so that was something that was a huge eye-opener to me growing up here. But it is also something that isn't far from my life right now. Not the dysfunctional family part, but my sister is gay, and her partner, her wife Angie, is of Latino background, and they have children. And so I think culturally speaking, when you talk about getting to know struggles today, I think one of the issues is certainly that of the civil rights movement of gay people today. And we're obviously all paying attention to what's happening in the federal court, but I think that, and we all have those experiences. And so the idea is that although I may be a white, middle-aged, balding man, portlier than I'd like to be, I think that we all reach out, and I know that I have reached out and feel that I have connection to the lives of those litigants that will be in front of me.
I agree, I am white too. But I have represented quite a few people who are of different ethnic origin or race. African American. I have represented a number of them in family law cases as well as in some business matters. I also have represented a very broad spectrum of people, people from all over the world. I can name countries. I mean, it's probably not going to be all-inclusive. China, Japan, India, Russia, Hungary, Norway, and even France, where I come from. And that's another aspect of it, is that I am myself not your, I guess I don't think I'm your typical candidate. I bring the experience of someone who immigrated, someone who comes from another country, someone who came without any resources or connections and really had to make a life here through hard work and all that. In terms of understanding people from other backgrounds, I also have done a lot of work in the community, in community service. For example, I'm on the board of Avalon Housing. A lot of what Avalon does is helping people with housing and support services, but a lot of that involves very, very different ethnic groups or race, a lot of African Americans, single mothers. And so I think through my work I have gained at least a fair amount of knowledge of all this diversity in our community. And again, from campaigning a lot of that, I have been endorsed a couple of weeks ago by the Washington County Democratic Party Black Caucus. I've been endorsed by other community leaders in the African American community. And so I believe I'm learning a lot about some of their concerns, and I have worked with many of them throughout many years now.
Okay. Well, look, it's a problem. It's a problem that, you know, it's unfortunate that we don't have a more diverse bench. But, you know, my approach has always been to be open and to recognize that, I'll give you an example from my first social work job out of getting my MSW. 23 years old, I get a job in a therapeutic community in Jamaica, Queens. When I go for the interview, they say, how are you going to feel? they weren't lawyers, obviously, being the only white staff member and the only white person in this building. And I'm 23 and I have a degree, and everybody I'm supervising is a counselor at the program because they came through the therapeutic community. They were recovering addicts. So it was a dynamic just that was set up for failure. And I said, on some level. And they said, do you think you can deal with this? And I said, absolutely, and here's why. Because I'm not going to come in and say, I understand everything you're going through. Because the bottom line was, I didn't. But I am going to come in and say, look, and what I did say at 23 years old, I said, look, I know you think I have nothing to add here. I know nothing about rehab. And, this is a weird situation. But, give me a chance. I do think I have something to add, but more importantly, I think I have a lot to learn from you, especially from the staff. And so, I immediately worked to start breaking those barriers down. And it was incredibly successful. I mean, it got to the point, where they were like, we need the social worker, get her in here, Tracy, this is your problem. But they really bought into the fact that I had clinical skills to add to the program, but also I learned from them because, when they were much more savvy than I was at that point. I mean, and in my current practice, I mean, frankly, 75% of my clients are people of color. And, I thought before I started working with people, in my legal services are also from a lower economic, they're low income. We serve up to 125% of poverty. And, I thought I knew what it was like to be poor, or I could imagine it, or, how hard it was, until I actually started representing poor people. I hear people say, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, that's really great when you have boots, and I'm not kidding. It's very difficult to get out of poverty, and I think just on-the-ground experience working with, I've represented at legal services, I don't know, my current case closings are over 1,000 low-income Washtenaw County residents. And being open to their experiences and really listening and gaining an understanding of how difficult it is and things they face, that I'm sorry to say, this maybe not believe, but my colleague gets pulled over a lot more than I do. African American, so it's an issue.
All right. We know that the disproportionality has been a problem in the criminal justice system for a number of years.
Hundreds of years.
Yes. So we tried to address it. We looked at all our juvenile cases when I was there, and as you moved up the system, it got more disproportionate. So folks that were in the diversion program, it was about proportionate to the community. And as you rose up, kids on probation, then on intensive probation, the kids went to placement. Each level you rose up got more disproportionate. So it's been a problem we've been trying to address. In the drug court, what we did, when I ran that program, we had someone come in and look at the program, look at our numbers, success rates, and we were successful with African American females, but African American males we're not as successful with. So we made an effort to bring in an African American probation officer and took steps to try and address that. I think what speaks to me is, since I've been on this campaign trail, I've met a number, out in the community, I've met a number of folks that I've dealt with as when I was a juvenile court referee or as a prosecutor. And I had a mother come, an African American mother, come to called and asked whether she could walk with us in the 4th of July parade, because I had dealt with her child in the juvenile court, and she said, you're a part of the reason my child is successful today. I met another young man, he had come through the drug court, and he saw me on the campaign trail, and he came up and gave me a big hug, and I was rough on this kid. He had a hard time getting through drug court. He had been inpatient a number of times, but I think what he knew is that I cared about him. And I was hard on him, but he knew I was doing it out of caring for him. I think another thing is I'm currently endorsed by both the prosecutor and the public defender. So I've been in juvenile court making decisions for 14 years. The prosecutor's on one side arguing, and the public defender, Mr. Powell's on the other side arguing. And they have both agreed that I was making appropriate decisions, and both have agreed to endorse me. So I think I have a history of dealing, unfortunately, what is a disproportionate number of African Americans that we get in our criminal justice system.
Never known this group to be silent.
You're making it tougher to make a decision.
Could you each tell how many circuit court jury trials you've done?
Starting with me.
You're close.
I've done none.
I've done one circuit court jury trial. I was actually representing the defendant, and we counterclaimed against the company. It was a truck driver I was representing, and we actually won. We got the damages in the counter complaint. It was not a big case. It was a very exciting case when we won, when the jury comes back and tell you you actually got an award. That was very exciting. But I've only done one.
Yeah, I've done one as well, and just so I'm sure most of this group knows, family law cases, you don't have a jury. So obviously my expertise, much of my expertise is there, and I've done dozens of family law cases, family law trials, but they are tried to the bench. So we don't, maybe get so.
In circuit court, I've done 50 jury trials. District court, I didn't keep track of the number. It had to be more than 50. Just district courts tend to go to trial more. But in circuit court, 50 district courts, probably more than that, and is deciding cases as juvenile referee hundreds as well.
I beat you, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. So candidates frequently talk about what's wrong with the place that they hope to become a part of. What's right with the circuit court?
We can start. People we work with are tremendous. We are asking our employees to do more and more with less people. We've had a budget crunch. We have less employees doing the same amount or more work. And the ladies and gentlemen who deal front at the counter with folks that come in who are in crisis, who are upset, who are angry, they do a tremendous job of dealing with the folks that come in and do that. And I think that tone is set from the top. So the judges being able to respect the people that come in and respect the people that work for them flows down, and I think that's shown by how we treat people that come in. They did an SEO, is requiring the courts to do a study, customer satisfaction. So no one comes to court happy, other than when we do adoptions. And when we did ours last year, we got tremendously great ratings of the people that came in and used our services, spoke very highly of it. And these are folks that are not happy to be there. And we got a high rating on that, so we were proud of that.
I think that, great front-end staff in the circuit court. I know I have good relationships with them. I come in, they're friendly. It's great to see them. They want to, help us out. I really enjoy the accessibility of our judges. For instance, Judge Connors recently, I had a suggestion for him about his peacemaking court. And the reason, one of the things was actually, I thought, if he was going to be applying peacemaking to the juvenile justice community, he really needed peacemakers who can be lay people who go through the training, who actually come from the community where the juveniles come from, rather than somebody like me or you, but we don't come from that community. So, I called Judge Connors up, and I had identified a few people through my campaign, frankly, and through going to community meetings who were interested and I thought would be great peacemakers. And he was just immediately open to that suggestion, which is just wonderful, and reached out to those individuals in the community. And I understand one of them has already been brought into the process. So I really enjoy the accessibility of the judges, and I certainly want to continue that on the bench, because I think people can bring in great ideas, and I think this will be a great thing for the community.
I think there's a lot of good things about our courts. I think we have a number of judges who have really made a strong effort to be innovative and to try new courts, pilot courts, and I won't go through all of them. I think when we talk about what's right with our court, we need to look at our community. I think we have a community that's very engaged in trying to find new ways of doing things. Mediation is big in this community. It has been for a long time. Zina Zumeda was a leader, but a lot of people are committed to it. And it's made a huge difference in family law. I'm not saying that mediation needs to be ordered in every case, but for many cases I've seen the court order to mediation have been great. It keeps people out of court. It makes the family much more likely to be able to co-parent after a divorce. I think those are great things about our community. And I think generally speaking, our attorneys, people talk about attorneys being sharks. I always say, you know, in a lot of communities, including our own, you have a lot of attorneys who are very dedicated to community service. They do a lot in the community, judges too, and other people obviously. But I think we have a great community, and I'm proud to be a part of it, really.
Echo. I'm not, that's not it, but we are very fortunate, and you're the great example of that. I mean, this is a brown bag lunch put on by the Dispute Resolution Center, and there's 30 people in the room, 35 people in the room. We've had some forums where there's been 3 people in the room. So, you know, the fact that there is a huge engagement from the community, I would agree with Veronique. I think we're very fortunate. We have a tremendous court staff with some depth and experience. That was a struggle a few years ago when some of the mandatory retirements were coming into play, and there were new staff. But I think that we're lucky again that we've got a great sort of cross-section of veteran staff people and new staff people who are energized. I think that is an asset for our court systems right now. That's reflective, I think, of people's customer service. I think we're also really lucky to have the judges we do. Because Judge Wheeler and Judge O'Brien did mandate mediation as a required step in the divorce process. I mean, I have an office in Chelsea too, so it's not unusual for me to go to Jackson County or Lenawee County, and I just perkily pipe up, how about mediation? And that you just get a complete blank stare. I'm like, what? What is that? And so the fact is that we expect it here, even in the judges that don't order it. I mean, you go to a pretrial and you just go to the lawyer and say, well, what do you think? Who should we use? And so that's a huge asset, and that's reflective both of the court, but also of the community. So I would echo, and that's enough said.
Bill, do you still have a question?
I don't know if I have a question or a statement. I don't know. I guess I'm going to start off with a statement, I guess. I hear you four talking about what you're doing, what you've done. I guess I want to look more into when you talk about the community, going out in the community. Well, being an Afro-American male, when you think of communities, I think of south side of MC, Will Around and all like that. But and no offense to anybody here, but we're talking community. Now I'm thinking of Chelsea, Dexter, Manchester, Whitmore Lake. It's my belief that whoever gets on the bench, as we say, that this portion of people coming to the court are going to be Afro-American. And they're going to be coming from the east side of Ann Arbor. So when you're talking about the community and going out and doing like that, are you guys also branching out east and not just hanging out west? And I don't mean it to be derogatory toward you, but I just mean this is all of Washtenaw County. You will be hearing all kinds of ethnic groups that are coming in your court for various reasons, families. I'd like to hear, and not to put you in spot, because I'm not with you campaigning or anything like that, but it's the whole county that we're all dealing with and that you're going to be representing. If I said that right, fine. If I didn't, too bad, answer it anyway. I'm sorry, I'm pretty direct. But.
Going out and campaigning and selling myself has not been one of my favorite things to do, but a part of this that has been tremendous and has been great is we've gone to a number of African American Baptist churches on the east side, and they have been so tremendously welcoming. They want to come, they want to hear from you, being part of that community and their services, that they appreciate you being there and interacting. And so we spend a tremendous amount of time, particularly on the east side, doing that. I think it's an important group to reach out to, particularly since we are disproportionate, that's an important group to reach out to. State Representative Rutledge, representative from the east side of the county, is endorsing me as well, and has spent a significant amount of time doing an investigation before he did that endorsement, so I appreciate that. So I'm going to try and make sure we're reaching out to all parts of the county.
Well, so since I started this campaign, myself and my campaign, we've knocked 22,000 doors. Okay, I've personally probably knocked about 10,000. And many of those, probably more than half have been on the east side. So I'm taking my campaign directly to the doors, and I have people all the time, they say, thank you for coming to my neighborhood. I can't believe you're walking in my neighborhood, not at my door. And I said, first of all, I love doing this. I love campaigning, because I love meeting people in the community. I love talking to them and finding out what's important to them. And I also said the east side's important because you know what? My clients come from the east side. I would say, 80% of my clients are from the east side of the county. That's the constituency I serve. That's the constituency I'm an advocate for. Not just making a decision about them or ruling over them. I mean, out there with them, interviewing them, sitting down in their homes, prepping them for trial, going to their homes, looking at habitability issues, taking pictures. Sometimes when I do LT landlord tenant cases, my foot, I can't tell you how many, my darn foot has gone through the floor and not a habitable home. I've actually taken my daughter with me, and she's like, I can't believe people live like this. I said, a lot of people live like this, and you need to know this is poverty. So for the 20 years, frankly, in my career, I worked in the worst neighborhoods in New York. I sat in my office, there were gunshots out of my window every day. I used to move away from the window. So the clients on the east side, those are the people that I've been advocating for most of my career. So, I think I have a strong understanding.
I don't have the record of Tracy of knocking on doors, but I have knocked on a lot of doors, and so has my campaign, and a lot of them have been in Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township. I also have spent a lot of time in those areas going to events, and for example, I'm going to the NAACP dinner coming up. There's a Freedom dinner I'm going to. Last Saturday, I was at a sorority event in Ann Arbor, almost completely black community. I talk to a lot of people. I really want to understand the issues of the African American community in our county. But I have a lot more to learn. I totally realize that, and I plan to learn more and more and talk to people and continue to do that, whether or not I'm elected. I just want to add one more thing, and that's kind of not answering your question, frankly, but just in terms of my background, I come from a very small village in the north of France, 700 inhabitants. It's a farming village. And sometimes, it's quite different an environment from the environment I'm in now, but at some level there's a lot of similarities, what people struggle with, the connections between people, and I kind of, this background I think helps me connect with people.
So like my colleagues, I've done a fair amount of knocking on doors and meeting people. I've done a lot of that on the east side. I've done a lot of trying to listen to the people that may be able to represent a larger group. I mean, I recognize I don't have the time to knock 11,000 doors between now and the election. I know Tracy's been doing this for a long time, but I have had an opportunity to sit down with David Rutledge, who also did endorse me, and hear about his life and what his struggles have been and his successes as a representative in the state house. I mean, he's a great guy. I too have gone to the churches on the east side at the invitation of people. I've gone to Brown Chapel, AME, Greater Shiloh, and I've sat down with the pastors and talked to them about what could I do as a judge to help them and their constituents or their members, so that they can help, so that we could work together to help bring stability and peace, and I could support their work. I mean, realistically, I mean, anything that I do to support their work then thus supports my own work as a judge. So part of it has been then going out and talking to people. The example I gave at the beginning, though, was from sitting down with Brenda Stumbo, who said, people in Ypsilanti Township have a hard time coming to court in Ann Arbor. It's hard to park. If they've got a personal protection order hearing, their witnesses are scared and they don't like to come down there. So what I said to her was, that's a great idea for me to think about, or that's a problem for me to help solve. That's what I mean about the utilization of this court on this facility. With the technology now, we could have those personal protection order hearings here, where there's no problem having people park. We're less than a mile from Safe House, and that's just an example of what I mean when I say I'm a big picture thinker. I'm responsive to people's requests, and I think that those are examples where the judges can get directly involved in the community. I'm not brilliant, but I'm an idea guy, but I think that's something that all the judges can bring to the table too. So.
You raised an issue in terms of what you would change to bring to the community if you were judge. Could the rest of you answer that question? The rest of you answer the question is what major change would you bring?
I would be very active in promoting cooperative methods of resolving cases. I realize some of it would not be a change because some judges are already ordering mediation, and I would certainly consider doing that. But I would also look at other methods. I would be very active in supporting like collaborative divorce, for example, in which I work. Sometimes it's helpful to have a judge who's very, who's encouraging it, and also is available if there's questions about the case. I would also, I'm very concerned about the destructive aspects of custody litigation, and I would make sure before people get into custody litigation, if it's looking like they're heading that way, I think they need to be educated. I think a lot of attorneys do educate their clients, and a lot of attorneys do not educate their clients. They stand to benefit financially. I think the judge has to educate people before they get into this treadmill, which will lead them to a highly destructive custody litigation. And I would ensure that that's taking place. And that's not just people who are represented by attorneys. About 30% of people who come to court, I believe, are proper attorney, and they may end up in custody litigation because they don't know how to stop the process. And so I think there's an important part and an important role that the judge can play in stopping the process, in telling people this will destroy your family, this will destroy your finances if they are represented by counsel. So those are a couple ideas. In the area of domestic violence, I think we need to do more so that people who are victims of domestic violence don't feel like they're going to be running into their assailant when they come to court. We need to stagger arrival time. We need to have some protection so they don't have to face each other. There may be some constitutional limits to that, but there's a lot that can be done. So those are some of the ideas I have about how to improve things. But definitely, I've always been very, very active in promoting cooperative methods, and I will continue to do that. There's probably new methods that can be beneficial. I will be open to that. I will continue to be active in that area because it's dear to my heart. I was myself divorced, and I use mediation to get divorced.
Great. So I mentioned that I have an MSW. I'm a field instructor for Eastern Michigan University School of Social Work, and a program that I've implemented at Legal Services, again, is a program where we have social work students at Legal Services who provide wraparound services to our clients, such as helping them access stable housing, food assistance. I work a lot with survivors of domestic violence, so often they need, I will see that it's very clear that this person has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and so I make sure that they receive trauma therapy. And I use students because it's so hard for me to wear all these hats when I'm carrying 100 cases and litigating cases. The students under my supervision provide those services. What I'd like to do is implement, with the help of Eastern, and I've already talked to many professors at the School of Social Work about this, a program where we have Eastern students in the probate court who can provide wraparound services and help people access services. The reality is that people continue to lose their children simply because they're poor. I know this isn't a popular thing to say, but it is the truth. In minor guardianship cases, you often have a reunification plan. That plan will say that the parent has to jump through, several hoops to get their child back, and they just need to get stable housing or, access this service. Well, let me tell you, these services are not easy to access. Washtenaw County is a great county, but, I'm somebody who has several degrees, and it's not always easy to get the client's services you need. So when you take someone who's already under stress, who's trying to get their child back, maybe is struggling with mental health issue, maybe that's what they need to stabilize to reunite with their child. they need an extra hand. And I would have students who could help do that. That's one of my ideas.
Barbie, when we combined the juvenile court and the probate court services a number of years ago, we made a number of improvements at that time. One, getting into one building, so we streamlining services, which is cost saver, but also changing procedures to make the system more friendly, user-friendly, particularly for the pro clients that come in. So we've already addressed a number of those issues when we combined the probate and juvenile courts. As part of that process, we also used a number of the schools, Eastern and the law schools, for doing our guardianship investigations. So we reached out to that community. We had gotten, before they were unified, we were significantly behind in that we're required to do guardianship investigations, but we brought those students in, used some of our probation officers, and got those up to date. So we've made a number of improvements already to the courts. I think everyone has stated and we agree anytime alternative dispute resolution is appropriate, make use of that is appropriate. And I just want to address the people losing their children because they're poor. I've done abuse and neglect cases for 14 years, and I've now done the guardianship cases for 4 years. There's never been an allegation, let's take this child because its parents are poor. Do they have obstacles to them that people of means don't have? Certainly they do. Certainly it's harder for them to access services. But to say that we as the court are taking people's children because they're poor is just simply not the case. Sometimes how a guardianship can be used is if DHS becomes involved in an investigation. Sometimes they have to file a petition because the allegations are so serious that they have to go through the neglect proceedings. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, Grandma, can you get guardianship of this child while Mom resolves whatever the current issue she has, whether it's a drug issue, a housing issue, whatever the issue is. Can you get guardianship of this child during that time? Now there's good and bad to that. You always have to weigh. Good for the family is you don't have DHS in your lives. Family can keep the child in their family and they can solve the problem and address the issues as a family. The other side is if you go that guardianship route without filing the petition in the juvenile court, that mother does not get mandated services that they would if a petition were filed in the neglect court. If you file a petition in the neglect court, DHS is mandated to provide services to that mother. So we don't take children and file a neglect petition and leave the parent out there with nothing. They are absolutely mandated to provide services, and for whatever the issue is. If it's a mental health issue, if mandated to provide mental health services. If it's a drug issue, mandated to provide drug court services. And so then you have a court looking over that and making sure that they're getting those services. And you cannot terminate a parent's parental rights unless you have shown that DHS has absolutely provided every service to that parent that they need. So to say that we're taking kids' children because they're poor is not the case. Certainly they have extra obstacles, absolutely they do. Thanks.
I think we have time for one more question.
Can Pat answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is pretty well documented by the American Bar Association that many people lose their children in guardianship cases due to neglect. There's a current bill, the neglect is actually poverty, okay? We can call it neglect, but it's poverty. As a matter of fact, there's a bill in the Michigan legislature that's being written that my office happens to be consulting on, the language, it's already been submitted, that's going to add language to the parental termination statute that actually outstates that you cannot lose children simply for lack of resources, i.e. poverty, housing instability, food. The reason that this bill is before the legislature is because it's an issue. That's the bottom line. I mean, we may have a philosophical difference on this issue, but if you talk to Vivek Sankran over at the law school who is working on this bill, my office who's working on this bill with Jeff Irwin, we know this is an issue, and we know that other states, not Michigan, have this provision in their parental termination statutes because they also saw that cases that came in as quote-unquote neglect cases were really poverty cases. They were housing instability and food instability. And again, in guardianship cases and reunification plans or in limited guardianships, you don't get mandated services, so it's even harder to access services. But if you fail to follow a plan in a limited guardianship, that can go directly to a parental termination case, which is the pitfall of parental guardianships. And I will tell you, as somebody who's done dozens of minor guardianships when Judge Outside was the referee, I don't believe that they actually went to trial in front of her, but as trying these cases, these are really difficult to undo. Because I've represented dozens of mothers who cannot get their children back. So for whatever, I'm sure there's no intent to take a child simply because they're poor. But housing instability, food instability, socioeconomic instability is a documented reason that people lose their case throughout the country. And there's just tons of research on this. And I tell everybody to go to the American Bar Association website and look at this because it's definitely a significant issue.
So are you saying that the kids, the parents lose their child because of they don't have housing or whatever? Is this a state issue or is this a county issue? You're directly that is this county is doing that, or are you saying it's a state issue with the survey you said that's documented?
Well, it's a national issue in general.
So it's just not, you're just not saying Washtenaw County judges are.
No, I'm not saying that Washtenaw counties are taking children because they're poor. I mean, this is a.
I just want to get a clarification here.
Right. No, I understand.
I'm not up there with you guys.
Right, but I'm saying this is an issue for our courts.
Okay.
It certainly happens here in Washtenaw County. I'm sorry to say I've had these cases and I've seen that maybe it's unpopular. I'm not saying that's why we need more resources, because it's a very difficult situation at the same time. Where do you put a kid who has housing, and where do you put this child? It's not a black or white issue. So, ideally you get the services to the parent, but when the parent doesn't mandate the services, can you put the kid on the, when the parent can't get the services, do you put the kid on the street or in the car with the mother when they're homeless? No, that's not a great solution either. So I'm saying my idea is to get students in to help with that situation.
Okay, thanks. We have time for one more question, but only if you all can answer it in a very short period of time. Simple question.
A simple question. Can you each summarize what your experience is specifically with divorce cases?
I have 25 years of experience as an attorney with about 23, I believe, where I was specializing in family law. In the process, I've probably had trials or evidentiary hearing on the average maybe 2 a year. That's a guess, estimate. A lot of motions, and a lot of, I generally speaking take my cases to mediation if it's at all possible, but there are some cases where it's difficult to do so because people, for example, someone who's moving to another state or another country, that's very difficult, or if there's alimony issue with someone who has very serious disability, that can be very difficult to resolve. So I need to be brief, so I leave it at that.
So I've been a lawyer for about 16 and a half years. Since that time, about 50% of my total practice has been in family law, including, as everything you described, divorce, custody, paternity, child support, post-judgment matters. So all of those things, like Veronique, I have used a ton of the resources locally in terms of dispute resolution. I'm exceptional at settling my own cases too, so I sometimes I get them settled without help, but that's something that I'm very comfortable with. I too probably try about 2 cases a year. I think the concept of the divorce trial has really gone away, where it used to be you'd have a whole weeks-long trial on custody, support, alimony, property division. Now you tend to get it boiled down to the evidentiary hearing on 1 or 2 issues. So that's when I say I try a couple of cases a year. That may be a couple-day trial on just custody or just property division. But it's consistent, I would say.
About 75% of my practice currently is family law. I've tried dozens of cases. I've done hundreds of divorce cases. I've argued successfully in family law cases at the Court of Appeals and represented people from the trial court up into currently working on a Supreme Court case. It's interesting even that my clients tend to be low income, because I work with survivors of domestic violence. I often do have cases where the other side does have assets, but because of the power and control issues, my client can't access them. That's how they end up in my office. And I often get calls from private attorneys that this person can't get a retainer. Can you take this case? But the husband makes 6 figures. So we're able to So I do also have experience with asset division, even when there are substantial assets as well.
When I was a advocate, I was a prosecutor and a Michigan Assistant Attorney General, so that neither of those dealt with divorce law. As a juvenile court referee, it wasn't divorce law, but it was, I think the most important thing in making a decision in the divorce is what to do with the children. And so I spent 14 years making decisions about children and their family. And when a youngster is on probation to you, you can make the decision at that point whether they should move from one parent's house to the other parent's house or whether they need some other placement. So I made those decisions for 14 years. And since becoming a judge, there's probably 30 motions a week. So made decisions 30 times a week on the divorce cases that come up from me now as a judge.
So I want to say thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And I feel, I speak for everyone here, that Washtenaw County is incredibly lucky to have 4 such competent people running for judge. It must be hard for you all, but it's really a gift to all of us. Our next brown bag lunch will be November 5th. And I expect that you all will not be here. But you will have.
No.
You take these day off.
I have
Because it's the day after the
I'll be
election.
out collecting yard signs.
I thought you should hear someone do that.
Okay, so thank you all, and we'll see you.